The Last Stand Aftermath is a game with a lot of ambition. A roguelike zombie survival game, it plays like the sick, freaky love child of Hades and State of Decay. Successfully crowdfunded by studio Con Artist Games and publisher Armor Games on Kickstarter in October of 2020 and officially released in November of 2021, Aftermath is the latest release in the decade-spanning The Last Stand series, which initially gained popularity during the 2000s browser-based flash game era. One notable characteristic of the series as a whole is a constant stream of bold creative decisions by the developers. Not to say it always works, but strong choices have taken the series from straightforward wave defense to wave defense with resource management in multiple locations to a story-driven RPG to a now-defunct browser-based MMO, and Aftermath feels like it's meant to unify everything the team has learned so far. But when Aftermath first launched, there were some common sticking points. The game had potential, but there were a number of recurring glitches and some unintuitive gameplay mechanics holding it back. However, since release, there have been a number of patches, and most recently a larger update, which added new content, expanded on existing elements, and made adjustments to those unpopular mechanics in direct response to player feedback. So while there is still work to be done on this decidedly unpolished gem, it's clear that the extremely small team at Con Artist Games is far from calling it a day on The Last Stand Aftermath. So with that being said, welcome back to Status Report, where we check up on games in progress and see how they've grown. But first, a quick loving reminder that you liking, commenting, and subscribing is the only way for us to be accepted by the secret undead cabal that's in charge of YouTube, so thank you so much for doing that. Anyway, when I saw the game was a roguelike, my immediate response was, oh, that's trendy of them. But to be fair, this isn't really much of a pivot since there are roguelike elements baked into the series' DNA as early as The Last Stand 2. And there are a number of other pieces of Aftermath like that, things either tangentially or directly connected to the games that came before. You control a continuous series of volunteers, zombie virus-infected survivors whose job is to use their remaining hours to make a one-way trip out of the safe zone to gather intel and resources, which can then be invested into upgrades and gear to help the next volunteer push a little bit further and gather a little bit more. You know, roguelike stuff. But within those runs lies a nicely fleshed out survival game experience, complete with scavenging, inventory management, crafting, you know, survival stuff. You need to eat and drink to maintain your stamina bar, which provides you with cans and bottles which can then be used to craft other useful items. Certain recipes can be constructed out of your backpack on the go, but others require a fire or workbench, both of which can be found out in the world. As you complete more runs, you gain experience and level up, which unlocks new upgrades to spend gathered resources on. If it exists in this game, there is probably something upgradable about it. Stamina, carry weight, the ability to find secret supply drops, the ability to build a flamethrower. Some of these are more impactful than others, but the level-based drip feed keeps the pool of upgrade choices fresh and diverse without being too overwhelming. While upgrades help, your volunteers never stop being disposable, and this is made very clear from the outset of the game when your tutorial character is unavoidably vivisected while trying to follow orders. After a death, you select your next volunteer from a group, each with an initial job, which determines their starting items. At first, these are pulled from a small pool of simple jobs, but other more advanced ones can be unlocked with upgrades. As your supplies grow, your starting kit can be further supplemented from the safe zone's upgradable armory. Once you're properly geared up, you hop into the closest thing this game has to a consistent protagonist, the reinforced car that all of your volunteers take to the end of their respective line. The car has, get this, a whole bunch of upgrades. To armor, startup time, engine durability, how much fuel you begin with. You won't get very far without it, so it really is an extension of the player. Okay, hold up. It is
weird complaint time.
The gas tank on this car can only hold 5 units of gas. Even if you find more than 5, you just throw the rest of it on the ground because you are told there is no more room. So what are these? What are these canisters? These fuel containers? Are they full of gas? Maybe the gas tank itself only holds 1 or 2 units and the rest goes inside of the... False. When you find a full container of gas out in the world, it has 4 units of gas in it, meaning that the maximum capacity of one of these containers is at least 4 units. Even if the car's tank only holds 1 unit of gas at a time, the maximum capacity of those 2 containers is at least 8. Meaning that at the very least, the most you should be able to hold is 9. It's clear the fuel limit is there to help control the pace of progression, and that's fine, but in that case, just make this some boxes then, or a tire, or literally anything other than 2 gas cans. Okay. Resume. Once your volunteer and their stupid fucking gas cans are out on the road, a balancing act begins. Your infection imposes a time limit. Zombification is non-negotiable, and it will gradually overtake and lower your maximum health bar. But for each full segment that succumbs, you get a choice from 3 random mutations. You've got the Build-A-Bear strain, I guess. I'm dying, but at least I'm jacked. At least I'm agile. At least I smell like a corpse. Early on, for the price, these boosts feel welcome, plus you can specialize and stack the effects of subsequent mutations, trading vitality for power, until next thing you know, your volunteer is a barely recognizable mass of skill buffs, just barely clinging to the last shreds of their humanity that will drop dead if a zombie so much as looks at them. Balancing act. The infection timer can be greatly extended via upgrades as well as doses of an antivirus that temporarily freezes your infection's progress. Your first dose is free, but from there you'll need to track down additional ones in the field, and even then, accessing them takes resources that might otherwise have gone towards securing supplies for long-term progress. This means that every burst of immunity counts. Do you try to keep yourself immune at all times, or wait to dose yourself when you know there's a high risk of exposure? There's no one right answer, and even a good run will find you with a much shorter health bar than when you started. One power that all of your volunteers have is subliminal radar. By entering a focused state, you can see the location of various points of interest, ranging from gas and supplies to wandering merchants to full-on spooky murder basements. So there's always some initial scouting to be done, but it's less about knowing where things are and more about deciding your approach. Will you sneak in there to save on supplies, or parkour through a window guns blazing to save on time? Both are valid approaches with the capacity to go horribly wrong. But on the rotting shoulders of your deceased volunteers, a story slowly creeps its way forward. Since your characters won't last long enough to see their sacrifice pay off, plot continuity is incrementally facilitated by a colorful cast of characters who mostly just sit on their asses in the safe zone while you do the real work. Though they do occasionally pop into your journey via radio to offer guidance, usually in the direction of the next thing that's going to try to kill you. Each new section of map as you get further from the safe zone has built-in story missions, pre-designed, not randomly generated levels that you will always encounter regardless of what route you take until you successfully clear them. These come in the form of detour stops that appear between nodes, as well as a single larger set piece which barricades the end of each zone. Detours are a one-and-done deal, but clearing the final obstacle serves as what I'm going to call a soft checkpoint. Each run still begins in the safe area, but you can move through any completed zone more quickly, provided you have enough fuel. Thanks to the fuel limit and the engine's durability, some pit stops are unavoidable, but it speeds things up tremendously, and there's always a well-stocked safe area in the middle of the zone you can aim for. The pre-built story levels are fresh and exciting, introducing scenarios which encourage flexible thinking and build well on the intrigue of the narrative. They're also dangerous enough that you might need a few tries to get it right. For that reason, some of the triggers for when story events count as completed could use some adjusting, because it's a real buzzkill to play all the way through a scripted scenario, bravely sacrifice yourself buying time for a bridge to very clearly lower all the way, then find that same bridge fully reset in your next run because it doesn't count unless you get back to your car. Even then, the story missions are a real highlight, deliberately designed experiences that showcase a real skill and care on the part of the developers. Unfortunately, my praise for the map design also serves to draw attention to the less precise, more generic elements, namely the things which in theory make the game endlessly replayable. The procedurally generated levels are not boring or ugly. Each new area you travel through has its own unique set of landmarks, buildings, and environmental hazards to deal with, and the recent content update added even more possible varieties. But after a while, an onslaught of random but similar environments leads to a disconnect from the continuity of the game world. The procedural generation is well done, but I'm constantly made aware of how well done it is, because I'm seeing a new combination of these increasingly familiar art assets every single time I die. I do hope they continue to add new areas as well as more variety for old areas, because that does help considerably. The update also added persistent storage stockpiles to the beginning of each new zone where you can offload extra items to use in future runs, where previously everything other than gathered intel and supplies would be lost on death unless you purchased insurance, an unpopular and apparently broken feature which has since been removed. The stockpile is a great addition because it rewards forward thinking and good resource management. It also pairs well with the reworked carry weight penalty system, which will impose progressively larger debuffs based on weight, where it used to be the penalty could be maxed out early and then basically ignored. Now, if you have more loot than you can feasibly carry, you could be rewarded for hanging onto it to toss into the next cache, or, balancing act, it could slow you down and get you eaten by one of the usual cast of special zombies. You know the ones. Explodey guys, big guys, jumpy guys, armored guys, really big guys, acid guys, fire guys, and it implements them competently enough. And that's how I feel overall. Have you played and enjoyed a roguelike or zombie survival game? Are you a fan of the other Last Stand games and willing to overlook some rough edges to support a passionate game dev? If so, you will probably enjoy this game. Some things may catch you off guard, but if you're even passingly familiar with the genre, roguelike or zombie survival, you pretty much know what to expect. But what is here does work, and if you're on the fence, there's nothing wrong with waiting for a good sale, but I have spent more money on games by larger teams that never came back to clean up their messes, and for the moment, The Last Stand Aftermath is pretty good. Still, it's my sincere hope that, in time, con artist games will continue to amplify the good and mitigate the less good, and make it something great. So, that's a status report on The Last Stand Aftermath in 2022. Have you bought it? Do you want to? Do you love it? Hate it? Leave a comment. In other news, people keep on subscribing. Hello, people. I assume, probably correctly, that it's because of Barotrauma, and good news, Barotrauma is up next, so thank you for your patience. If you've gotten this far, you probably already know the deal with liking and engaging and stuff. So until next time, I'm Jamie. Thanks for watching Standard Gaming.